get it, and we know that it's important that they be free so that they can be healthy and safe. What do you think, Chris?
You know, it's too early. I mean, I'm gonna try to get it
Yeah, we. I mean, I don't drink coffee, but I could just imagine folks who drink coffee ain't had their coffee yet because it's it's so early.
together. It's not even.
Yeah, the sun's not even up yet, and we're on our way to the Neuse Correctional. And
Tell them about the last time we came to Neuse.
oh, okay. So the last time we came to Neuse, okay, it was back in June, I think it was, right?
Like April.
April, right? It was like when the pandemic first hit, and Neuse was like a hot spot, right? So we got like over a dozen cars going to Neuse, and we get there, and they called every law enforcement that they could muster. Okay, we had state troopers, we had Wayne County, we had the sheriffs, we had everybody, and they had blocked the street off. And it was like, oh yeah, they had the Cherry Police from Cherry Hill Hospital. You know, once we realized that he was from Cherry Hill, you know, he hurried up and called himself some backup. I like, wait a minute, are you even the real police? But they blocked off the street and told us that, you know, we couldn't go any further. Like they literally blocked the street off. So we dropped some body bags and let them know that you're killing folks inside this facility because you're not giving them the proper protection that they need, and you're not letting them go. So the blood is on your hands. Of course, we pick the body bags up because we know they'll arrest you for littering if they can't get you for anything else. Me
What
and
was
Chris
their
got out and
reaction?
started walking, huh?
What was their reaction?
They were mad.
They were mad.
I couldn't get out. Remember, I had the baby.
You had the baby, but I'm just saying. Remember, we parked in the
did
parking lot,
park.
and then we walked back
And we-
up
oh,
with
we
the
did
baby,
walk with the baby.
with the baby in the stroller.
Child, and they were mad about that. Like they was real big mad that we were walking. Like they told us we couldn't park anywhere. I mean, they were just really punitive. They blocked the street and accused us of impeding traffic. And so we were like, well, how are we impeding traffic when you block the street? You know what I mean? Like y'all blocked us in. Like if you get out the street, we'll be out the street.
Right.
But so yeah, they did not appreciate us coming and bringing awareness to the plight of incarcerated people. They would rather be able to continue to harm people behind the shadows and no one know about it. And so the only reason they were upset was because we were there to expose the truth about the conditions of incarceration in all DPS, facilities, in all jails, and just any carceral facility across the state. That the ability to sanitize, disinfect, maintain social distance, keep yourself clean, your area clean, it's very limited when you're incarcerated. And so, it was important for us to highlight those things to the general public, because unless you've been locked up, you just assume that people get everything they need and they're just locked up. And that's not true. They're locked up with almost nothing of what they need is available to them. Almost nothing. And the very few things that they have to either work inside of that system to have money, or the financial burden of their care is on their families, who are oftentimes very poor themselves. And so the cost to even have some comforts at home is very burdensome on families to make sure that their loved ones have access to resources, but simple things, right? So we're talking about the ability to clean your hands. And I remember when COVID first broke out, DPS said, oh, well, we're making provisions for people. We're giving them an extra bar of soap, with one of the deadliest pandemics in the country. You know what I mean? Like, if an extra bar of soap was the cure, we wouldn't have coronavirus almost a year later, right? There are folks and organizations that have sued DPS. We have seen DPS be really resistant to the changes. They have violated the judge's orders. They have basically lied on affidavits to the judge. The judge said that this seemed like it was a form affidavit. He wanted a true accounting of what was happening. So DPS has really gone out of its way to not be, number one, transparent, and to number two, not be accountable. And what we know is that public health has to be transparent, and that community health is dependent upon correctional health being there, having standards, meeting those standards. And so it really is a public health crisis that we are living in. As long as there is a pandemic, but not just a pandemic in the general public, a pandemic that is overrepresented in our prisons and our jails, that is keeping us as a whole unsafe. So that's why they blocked the streets, because they were mad as hell that we were telling the truth about them, because they go to court and they lie in these affidavits. Yes, I said it. DPS officials lie in the affidavits, and we know they lied because even the judge said, "Hey, this doesn't. I want an accurate accounting of what has happened, and this doesn't seem like I'm getting that." We also know that they do things like, we've gotten reports of people. There's a policy within DPS: you should not be in the hole. Solitary confinement more than, like, I think it's either 30 days or 60 days. And the reports that we get from folks is like, oh, they honor that. They'll bring you back to regular population for a night and start your time back over again, violating their own policies over and over again, right? So, DPS has every reason to hide their inhumane, unconstitutional, and unlawful behaviors from the public. It is our duty as somewhat free people to make sure that we're working towards the liberation of all people. And liberation starts in truth telling. So that's why we're driving the news today. Back to you, Daniel.
Well, and can you tell me when when I think of Neuse, I think of that sort of, as you said, all the advocates knew that something was wrong because we were getting cries for help. We were hearing cries from help from prison. And we were raising alarms, but DPS was very nonchalant about it. They would say, "Oh, only 5 people have infections. We only have 1 person, whatever it was," because they just weren't testing. And I think when everybody knew something was wrong, but we didn't know the extent of the humanitarian and public health disaster that was already unfolding until they finally tested Neuse. And they went from having something like 9 people who had tested positive to, when they finally tested everybody, 400 and more than 450. I think it was like 470 people were found to actively have coronavirus. And I laughed just in exasperation because the what that shows is a callousness. What it shows is an inattentiveness. And Christy, I'm hoping, I thought you were very, when people were searching for answers, like, one, it made us think, we always thought that there was some acknowledgement of people's humanity who were in prison, even by the prison guards and DPS. And that, for example, what we've been saying is that the most shocking thing is that now we know, we'd assumed if a wildfire was going toward a prison, that they would move the people in that prison. And now we know that they would not. That unless they could transfer them to another prison, they're not just going to release them. And that is sort of, that callousness is what is truly shocking here. And I'm curious, Christy, because as people were searching for answers of how this could happen, people who had been in prison knew easily how it could happen. And can you tell just sort of the conditions that would facilitate that? And Muffin, and I'm curious, and the reason I said Christy is because I thought you said one time about how difficult it is to assert your Cheerios here. How difficult it is to assert your humanity
Hey man, Danny, you froze. Are we froze? It'll come back on. Cheerios. Cheerios. It might be out. Yeah.
Or we can
Go out.
just start recording. Yeah, go out and come back in, or we can start recording video, and that way this will happen.
do we all hit dead spot, or is everybody back on now?
Can you hear us?
Can you hear us now, Daniel?
Yeah. I can hear you.
Oh, okay. So you were asking me a question before you started breaking up.
Yes, I hear you. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I was saying that just get through. did it all get? Yeah, I mean, I guess, and I hope I'm not getting broken up now, but the main point I wanted to make was just how how Neuse was an example of just how out of hand things were, and how callous DPS was handling things when,
Oh, I got you.
They were saying that there were 4 people being, something like 4 to 9 people who had tested. And then the next week when we finally forced them to test, 475 people or something like that were actively had the virus. And so, it boggles the mind how that can happen. But I thought
well, it don't boggle my mind though, Daniel. And it don't boggle anybody who spent any time in any carceral facility's mind is boggled. Incarcerated folks have been telling the truth about the system for years. We have just never paid attention to what they said. We didn't value what they said, and they had no credibility in our eyes because of their status as an incarcerated person. And so, what we know is law enforcement lies, right? We know that for a fact. And so this deference to law enforcement has to end. This deference for for believing DPS staff over the people who are under their control has to end. And a lot of people don't tell what's happening to them because the people not gonna believe you no way, Daniel. You can literally be fucking dying, excuse my language, y'all, but you can literally be dying. And then people would be like, oh, okay. Like, you think you're dying? Well, you ain't dead yet. We look at the case of Dana Sanchez out of Denver last year, the Denver County Jail, a 26-year-old woman who was incarcerated pre-trial, not convicted of anything. She alerted the Denver County Sheriff's staff that she was in labor. They ignored her pleas, and she was forced to have a baby alone in her cell with no medical care, no medical necessities, nothing. Can you imagine having a baby inside of a jail cell with nobody to help you, nobody to guide you? You don't know nothing. You just know that this baby is coming and no one. Can you imagine the agony that she was in, the pain that she was in, the screams that she had, and no one came to her assistance? So that's the type of care that we see happening across the country. It's not isolated to Denver, Colorado. It's not isolated to Neuse Correctional. It is every single carceral facility in this country. It's punitive in nature, works to disconnect people from their humanity, from their families, from their communities, and it causes more harm in our communities than it does bring safety. And that's why people don't tell what's happening to them, because they know that people don't believe them anyway. You are treated with suspicion for anything, any type of request, anything that you say to COs is suspicious to them for whatever reason, because they've been indoctrinated with the belief set that folks who are incarcerated are bad people and are deserving of nothing. And that's just not true. There are plenty of good people who have engaged in bad behaviors that are locked up, right? I mean, plenty of people who are locked up. And there's plenty of people who are bad as hell and still out here in these streets. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Right. And law enforcement officers, right? Like, so, a person's status as being free or incarcerated is not an indicator of their value. Your value is set the day that you are born, period. And there's nothing that you can do to depreciate your value. Your value is intrinsic and it holds your entire life. If anything, your value appreciates. It doesn't depreciate as you grow throughout your life. You know what I mean? And so for us to act like because people have engaged in a behavior that their value has now been diminished is a mark and a stain on us as a society, not the people who are inside of the carceral.
Exactly. And I'm curious, can you talk a little bit about, you were, it is the same sort of idea. How just by asking for help, prison, like we're on the system. Can you just talk more about that dynamic? And I just had
in general when you're in prison. You said the dynamic of the guards not believing folks.
One, so anybody follow me, please. And then 2, Melissa, can you send out? Yes, exactly. But I was also asking Melissa to send out the link to the whole email. The 5:30 meeting list, just so everybody can join if they want to. Okay. Yeah, exactly. If you could talk a little bit about that, Christy.
Yeah, well, again, the dynamic between the dynamic between a person and correctional staff is that like enemy, right? Like we're enemies. It's us and them mentality, and they never believe us about anything. Whether I mean, again, Daniel, you unless you are bleeding out, I'm talking about. I ain't even talking about no nose bleeding, no little bit of blood. I'm talking about unless the blood is like squirting out every time your heart beat type shit, like. They ain't coming.
Even if they ain't coming.
I mean, sometimes they're not coming. You could be leaking and they're not coming. But that's the only time I could see them like rushing to do something. Now, if you look like you about to injure one of them or run up on them, they come, right? But if you gonna hurt yourself or somebody else, they real slow to that, right? But again, it just lies. They disvalue people who are incarcerated. Again, when you tell people, someone, a CO, that you're sick, you're not feeling well, they immediately think that you're trying to get something. And what you said, you can't just, I'm sick. It's got to be something else. And to see a doctor, first of all, you see the doctor. If you can afford to pay the price to see the doctor is not a good doctor, depending on where you're located, right? Because depending on where your prison that you're in, if you're seeing somebody at UNC or Wake Med, okay, you might be fine. But if you're seeing somebody from one of these privatized companies that has a contract, I can't even tell you how many times one of those companies has been sued, 5 and 6 times. They are like a healthcare provider for lots of carceral facilities across the country. And they have been sued multiple times for lack of care, for ineffective care. And if it was an attorney, we would call it ineffective assistance of counsel. But because the doctor is malpractice, like they just not caring for folks, right? And so that happens a lot. The doctors could care less. So even if you do get to see the doctor, you still can be treated very poorly once you see the doctor.
And a lot of times you only see a nurse practitioner or a CNA, and you never actually get to see the doctor in the county. You'll see them first and never get to see a doctor. They'll take $2 off your books.
It's 25 in Mecklenburg. Hello. Everything higher than shit. And then, you know what really kills me, Daniel? What really, 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 really kills me? Is that you go through all of that. You go through all of that to be seen. You sacrifice your dignity. You know, you sacrifice just all kinds of stuff to be seen. And then you get there and they still don't treat you well. And you still might not get the care that you need. So you still might come out of there after going through all of that and still be very sick. And still be very sick.
Yeah. Can you,
what else
Christy,
to tell people?
Yeah, I mean, I always thought I only asked because you've shared it many times before. Can you talk about your experience in jail and prison, or jail?
Not getting no prenatal care, Daniel. Hell yeah.
Yes.
So I sat for many, many months, basically my entire pregnancy, inside of the Mecklenburg County Jail, which I tell people is the most resource county in North Carolina. So you would expect that the best treatment would exist in Mecklenburg County. If there was treatment to be had, that you would receive that treatment in Mecklenburg County. But I received no prenatal care the entire time that I was there. I was there on a very large bond. I mean, I can just tell you about the fallacies just from the beginning to the end. So when I was originally arrested, it was myself, the twins. I ended up having twins eventually, but the twins' dad and his mom, we were all arrested for the exact same things: trafficking cocaine, maintaining a dwelling, possession with intent to sell, live within 300 feet of a school, 1,000 feet of a school, you know, all kinds of stuff. And we all had the exact same charges, the exact same bond. And so I sat, you know, of course, could not afford the bond. It was $167,000. I sat and I sat. And my attorney came to me and said, the state has offered a plea. What would you like to do? Well, the ladies that I was locked up with were the ones who had told me what it would be like to give birth while incarcerated. They told me that I would be shackled during the labor, that I couldn't have anyone in the room with me, that the guards would be in the room with me, but nobody that I chose could be in the room. that I would only get to stay in the hospital 24 hours, if a whole 24 hours, and that the baby, if I didn't have anyone to pick up that baby when I was discharged from the hospital, that the baby would be placed into foster care immediately. So that my child would be born in state's custody and would continue to live until I got out in state's custody, right? And so it was very disturbing to me. So I told my attorney, and he confirmed for me that everything that the ladies had told me was true, right? Like, they didn't lie to you. Everything they said is true. And he encouraged me to just really think about, did I want my children to be born in captivity, my child to be born, because we didn't know it was twins at the time. Did I want my child to be born in captivity? And I told him I don't. But he also said, you don't want this felony either, Christy. And I was like, I don't. But I was stuck between a rock and a hard place. So I took a plea, Daniel. And let me tell you what was so sick about the plea. I had lots of charges at the time. So I got a global plea. And so the global plea covered all my other charges, but I couldn't take the plea for the other charges on the same day. So I have 2 different conviction dates, even though I served out the same sentence on those conviction days. But 5 days after I took the plea, I get out that same day. 5 days later, I have the twins. That was in March. In July, when I go for the other set of charges to formally plead out on those charges, by that time, I had the motion of discovery from the other charges back. And what I found out was that the state lab showed that there was not 28 grams, which is what you need to have in order to be charged with trafficking. There was only 26 grams. So here I had been locked up for months on a charge and a bond that I would never be found guilty of. And the police knew that, right? And so I'm in a system receiving no care just because the police falsified how much cocaine or crack was there that they found, right? And so I think about that all the time, that now I walk around with a felony, forced into a felony conviction because the police lied, basically. And the DAs had the state lab reports when I took the plea. You know what I mean? They knew it wasn't 28 grams when I took the plea. That's why they were offering the plea from trafficking all the way down to just possession, right? And so all of that harm occurred in addition to not receiving any care. So I was literally locked up for no reason, because I was a substance user. The person who they really wanted to lock up was the twins' father. They didn't really want me. They just wanted to pressure me so that I would potentially testify against him. And so when I think about that a lot, that I'm walking around with these like false ass charges, you know what I mean? But it was, my hand was forced. Like, I didn't want my children to be born inside of a carceral facility. I didn't want them to go to foster care. I knew that the odds were stacked against me, were stacked against them, and I had to figure out how to mitigate some of that harm. And so the only way I could mitigate that harm was to take a guilty plea for something that I truly was not guilty of, right? And so that's the type of harm that people experience every single day. In addition to the lack of care that they receive, there are lifelong consequences that they suffer for the choices that they were pretty much backed into corners to make in this criminal legal system. So that's why Muffin, who was falsely accused of a crime, had to basically do the same thing. She needed to get out. She had 2 kids who were at home waiting for her. Nobody to take care of them, you know? And her daughter Jocelyn did a great job, but she was a teenager at the same time, you know what I'm saying? And so here we have a teenager trying to pay rent, trying to pay bills, trying to maintain, while their mom is falsely arrested and held on a bond that she can't afford. So, you know, Muffin and I have a special relationship because of the pain that we have both endured, and because of our desire to see people have what we have today, which is some sense of normalcy, some sense of a productive life. And that is, our advocacy is rooted in our own pain. And so when we come out here, it's nothing for us to get up at 3 and 4 in the morning. Yes, it's a sacrifice, but it's also, hell, I can't tell you how many days I got up at 4 o'clock in the morning, eat that nasty ass breakfast. You know what I'm saying?
You eat the breakfast, but I had to get up any damn way.
Well, see, I was pregnant and my stomach would be growling. I had to eat something.
I lost so much weight.
Yes, I lost weight now because I wasn't big when I had them twins. And let's just be clear, the twins was 4 pounds, 8 ounces and 4 pounds, 6 ounces. They would have been bigger than that had I had some real ass food day. But see, in Mecklenburg County, you don't even get, you get 1 extra carton of milk a day and you get 1 extra piece of fruit at each meal. That's not adequate nutrition, number one, for anybody, but especially a pregnant person, right? And so like when you think of like, I don't even think people think of nutritional guidelines for pregnant folks, right? Pregnant folks need extra food. California is the only state that has mandated nutritional guidelines for their departments of corrections. So in California, women get extra milk each day, or an alternative if they're lactose intolerant, they get extra fresh fruit, extra fresh vegetables. I ain't never had a fresh vegetable in a damn carceral facility, Daniel. I ain't never had no vegetables. Vegetables, like, what is that? You don't get vegetables while you locked up. So they get extra portions, they get extra food, and it is written into the policy specifically. Lots of policies are very vague and say, oh, sufficient or adequate nutrition. Well, that's left up to whoever's interpretation what adequate or sufficient nutrition is. And so California really is leading the way in some regards as it relates to the conditions of incarceration for people in general, but especially for pregnant folks. Because I think the average person doesn't think that pregnant people are incarcerated, but with women being the fastest growing population of folks who are incarcerated, growing over 800% since 1980, we're going to see an increase in pregnant folks being incarcerated. In North Carolina in 2018, there were 256 pregnant women inside of DPS facilities. Now, some of those women were from county facilities, and those county facilities send women to DPS because that's Johnston Correctional right now. So right now we passed in Johnston Correctional, y'all, on our way to Neuse on the right-hand side. I don't know, Daniel, do you know if Johnston is back open again? I know they had closed and sent everybody to Neuse. Do they look open? I look like I saw a little light on.
Yeah, I saw a light, but I can't tell.
Yeah, and I haven't heard that they reopened with that. But Christy, something you were saying was, I think, a really important point that just this idea of the prosecutors, thinking it was their duty, that they were on sort of a team and you were on the other team, and it was their duty to by any means necessary take you out of the game, right? And so that's one of the that idea that we grow up thinking, oh, it's an antagonistic system. Your defense attorney is supposed to do everything they can for you, and the prosecutor is supposed to do everything they can to prove that you did something and punish you. And that's actually not true. And it is in practice, but it shouldn't be, not even in practice, because we know the defense attorneys are not always going as hard as they can or as acting in the best interest of their client for many reasons. But I'm more concerned about the prosecutor's role, which is the prosecutor's job is not to just, blindly push as hard as they can for punishment and conviction and punishment. Their job is justice. And that's what I think is sorely missing in the criminal justice system, is this idea of prosecutors as arbiters of justice, that they don't need that's not how they should have acted in that situation with you. And there's a million other situations. And so I'm just curious, have you, Buffin, have y'all seen, what do you think the role of a prosecutor should be? And have y'all
I don't think they should be having no dang role. They illegitimate.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say they're illegitimate as well. Like policing isn't a legitimate response, and neither really is prosecution, because at the end of the day, we know that there were prosecutors that know injustice is being carried out, and yet they still allow it to happen. When we look at Ronnie Long's case, somebody who was there for 44 years under lies by the police, covering up of evidence by the DAs. That has happened so many times, countless amounts of times. People have been railroaded by DAs who just wanted a conviction. Daniel, you need to go teach at law school, because it's really the law professor's fault, in my opinion, because they the ones teaching these people what their role is. And so, what is the law professor's responsibility to law students? To tell them, help them understand what their role is.
And actually, that's a really good point. Christy, that law school doesn't teach anything about that sort of stuff. It vaguely talks about, criminal law being antagonistic and civil law to some extent, but largely, you just read cases and then you come out and, you're given this idea that, that you somehow know more than people who are actually going through the system. And then you're put into, you're sort of subject to whatever culture you enter into. So if you're and most prosecutors' offices are not, picking up or hiring 10-year, attorneys with 10 years of experience. They're hiring somebody right out of law school, and so they're taking somebody who doesn't really have is not really oriented or anchored in the world very well, and is susceptible to whatever values and expectations are being communicated to them. And so the culture of that office is really the guiding force. And so, and unfortunately, as you said, the culture of most prosecutors' offices, and I would say all of them, though there are, within prosecutors' offices, there can be bright spots, but I've never seen a prosecutor's office that as a whole is actually a force of good. And so I take your point exactly very well.
Yeah, because again, if then I don't know why y'all paying so much money to go to law school if they bring you out half baked. Like, it don't even make sense to me. That's crazy.
Yeah.
So you're gonna send people out in the world that literally have such a huge impact on Black, brown, and poor communities, and not equip them with the skills to be a skilled jurist, right? Because anybody can go to law school and pass the bar. We want skilled jurists hitting these courtrooms, whether they're civil or criminal, right? And they're not if they're coming out of law school and nobody's told them how to be a lawyer. You can teach somebody a law, but are you teaching them how to be a lawyer? Because that's what doctors, when they go to med school, they come out and they go to a residency because they take what they've learned in the medical program and they have to apply it in a real hospital setting. And they have to spend that residency 4 or 5, depending on what their specialty is, years and years and years before they even a full board certified doctor. And they have a major input and a major influence on a person's outcome, but so does an attorney. Why don't attorneys have residency programs as well? They need it. Y'all need it, Daniel, because and unless you want to go to jail and do a 60-day stint for you know what I mean, for your education on the criminal process and what it's like. But if you're not going to do that, then you have to have a residency program. It seems seemingly to me that people understand and attorney profession, right? Y'all always quote not the law. What we know is the impact of that law on the people. And that's what really never gets assessed. It's just, oh, this is the law. Well, hell, owning people was the law. Jim Crow was the law. So the law don't always mean it's right. The law don't always mean it's moral. The law don't always mean it's ethical. And so, like, we got to get beyond something just being legal. We have to get to the nitty gritty of, is it just? That is what I ask myself. Is this what justice looks like? And if the answer is no, we ain't doing it. If the answer is yes, then we move and we proceed forward. And so I think that internal compass that folks like myself have was shaped and born out of the injustice, right? Just being my compass was born out of the great injustice.
And I'm curious, and you may have broken up, Chrissy. I don't hear anything. Melissa, I'm curious, can you talk a little bit about the, I'm sorry, Chrissy. Melissa, can you talk a little bit about the Duke Center for Justice and I think of it as a Center for Justice, though I know that's not the complete name. I'm just curious, what can you highlight a little bit of what we're doing to curb some of these practices of prosecutors and law enforcement, and sort of, as Christy says, make the idea about justice, not conviction and sentencing?
Sure. Yeah, so we spend a lot of time just trying to pull back the curtain on what goes on, particularly inside of prosecutors' offices. We've spent a lot of time in the Durham prosecutor's office, just examining how prosecutors make decisions when it comes to plea deals, because so much of that is not public and so much of it is not something even prosecutors think about often. It's just something that they do, and they do it behind closed doors. And so we spend a lot of time trying to figure out what's going on. And we also spend a lot of time doing research about how the system works and how the system could be better. And you know, a lot of our work is rooted in people who've been impacted by the system, which I think is something, you know, one of our students actually just wrote a paper about one of our partners' research papers called Police Reform Through a Power Lens. And it discussed a lot about how the discussion around police reform is not rooted in impacted communities. And so the people who are impacted the most by policing, often Black people, Indigenous people, Latinx people, and those communities, they're the ones who live in the police state, so to speak, and they don't get a say in how reform comes about. And so we a lot of our research at the center actually has to do with, and that was a research paper by Jocelyn Simonson at a university in New York. But one of our students covered the paper. But so yeah, so it's important for us particularly that a lot of our research focus on people who have been impacted. And so, you know, you'll see things that come out of the center that have to do a lot with data, but you'll also see a lot more like surveys. So a lot of research that we've done recently has to do with driver's license suspensions and things like that. And so we have a whole part of our research that goes into, you know, surveying people with driver's license suspensions to see how it impacts their lives. And we've talked about different ways that we can feature impacted people's stories on our website, because we know that, you know, the only way to truly, you know, make change and educate people is to humanize what's happening, for people to be able to understand other people's struggles and where it comes about. And, you know, we want to be able to kind of build a bridge between folks, so that, you know, we can learn from each other and try to do better for each other. And yeah.
And so I'm curious, because you've been a reporter before, including on the police beat, and I'm just curious, you know, as Christy was talking, you know, what was your reaction, having seen it from not as an impacted person, but from, you know, multiple perspectives, as both a reporter and advocate, and you know, and especially like I think a police reporter is like a unique brand of reporting. So I'm just curious, what struck you about what she said?
Well, it's all striking. I mean, I didn't realize. I think what struck me the most about what she said, and I put it on social media too, was that so much of the advocacy that she and Muffin does is rooted kind of in the pain of their experiences. And it struck me because it's so great that we have people like Christy and Muffin to do this work, but it also, like, you guys have already been through so much and you still are taking on this cause. And it just, you know, it's just amazing. I mean, it's amazing that that you guys are doing that and that you're willing to share your stories. It is kind of a unique position to come at this, you know, from an advocacy perspective after having been a reporter for so long. But I think it also makes a lot of sense because as a reporter, you see every side and every facet to the system, right? Like, I've spent years reporting about police activity and police behavior, and I've spent years interviewing families of incarcerated people and people who were incarcerated, spending time in jails and talking to people about what it's like inside and what their life has been like. And, I've covered the system, for years and years. And the more you cover it and the longer you do it, the more your eyes are opened to how the system does not work and how it impacts people, and how there's a disconnect between people who aren't in the system and people who are, and even an even bigger disconnect between people who monitor the system and administer justice in the system and the people who are on the receiving end of it. Even lawmakers. I mean, there's just such a disconnect between understanding kind of the world that people live in and come from. I mean, that's very generalized, but I think I saw the biggest disconnect when I was in Charleston, South Carolina. And it's just, obviously there's a lot going on there, particularly when it comes to policing in North Charleston, things like that. But yeah, I mean, being a reporter, you see so much, and I'm not an impacted person, but I certainly have family members who've been impacted, who've been served time in jail, and all I can do is just listen and try to make it better for them, particularly in the parts of the system that's not working. I don't know if that really answers your question, but
No, thank you. I assume that that Muffin and Christy, who took the right route, and we're also driving just as fast as I was, just in the right direction, are probably coming up pretty close to Neuse, and so I'll defer to them sort of the schedule for the next few minutes, and please cut in if y'all were there already. 19 minutes out, it says. I form any additional thoughts that come to people's minds that anybody wants to share as we close in on Neuse.
Well, I wanted to say about the Wilson Center for Science and Justice that when I first met Brandon Garrett, I met him at a meeting that the state had about pretrial practices. And I was there to speak as an impacted person. And I actually ended up sitting next to Brandon. And we struck up a conversation. And ever since, we've had a really good working relationship as it relates to what's happening in my area, but just like across the state as it relates to pretrial, prosecutorial practices. I mean, he's always been a very thoughtful thought partner, and making sure that Muffin's voice is heard, that my voice is heard, that we have input, that our thoughts are important. Those are the types of things that impacted folks need to see. So often we have been told that we were wrong, damaged, bad in some way. And so those emotional scars that last after from incarceration or during your arrest, and all of those things can live in your mind for a long time. And so it's really important when people who are in positions of power, who are respected, who are law professors, lawyers, professional people, it's important that we have their public and support, right? Because that helps to validate what we're saying and what we're doing, because so many people will attempt to invalidate what we're saying and doing based on our lived experience alone. And so I really appreciate Brandon always making sure that we were included in conversations, that any type of research that would happen, that we talked about. And it's really important in these situations, right? So it's important that directly impacted people are not included as afterthoughts, but are at the table from the very beginning to help shape, shift policies, not even just policies, but the institutional values, just being an integral part of a team not a token, not just a story, not just a face that represents this pain and this trauma, but a colleague, right? And that has been very valuable to Muffin and I, helping to solidify our advocacy as valid advocacy in this state. And so shout out to Brandon Garrett for always standing in the gap for incarcerated people.
Absolutely. What more, like, Christy, what are some ways that people who are doing this work can make sure that impacted people have a seat at the table and are able to be part of the conversation for reform and for changing things for the better, given that they are the ones who are the most impacted?
I think it starts with how you see folks. You have to see impacted people as the solution to the problem, not the problem itself, but impacted people are the solution. If we follow the leadership and invest in the leadership of impacted people, we will see things move and shape and shift differently than we have before, right? Because we're adding something new. And we're social scientists, right? So science is always what? Investigating, adding, discovering, taking something away, putting, rearranging, trying to, sometimes we reform, and sometimes we transform. And what this system really needs is transformation. We don't really need reformation. We don't need the same raw ingredients that this system already contains: punishment, the carceral state, control, law and order. We don't need those anti-blackness and white supremacy. We don't need those same ingredients. We can create a whole new recipe. And that would be transformational. That is rooted in people's humanity and people's ability to be free, right? I mean, just to be free and to have free will is literally what makes us human. And when we take that away from people, we have reduced them to the animal world, right? We are saying that these people are not, we have, Daniel, because you over there telling Cheerios, sit down, get up, eat, come on, let's use the bathroom. That's exactly what happens in prison, is it not?
Sorry, I was laughing at this disaster of a caravan.
Oh, no, you fine. But I'm just saying, am I lying though? Aren't you reduced to an animal?
No, not at all. Oh yeah, no, you're completely
right. That's exactly what it is, because they tell you when to get up, when to lay down. Like when you got Cheerio, if you tell Cheerio to sit right now, Cheerio need to go ahead and sit down, right? Like you the CEO in Cheerio's life, Daniel. Did you know that? I don't think he heard.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
He's not the CEO in Cheerios life. No, but seriously, I mean, it is very dehumanizing things that happen. And so anything that a person can do to build up incarcerated people, to restore their humanity, to reconnect them to their humanity is important. It really is, because you already have a lot of doubt coming your way. There's already lots of stigma associated with having a criminal record, a huge stigma around having a criminal record. So when we are in spaces and allowed to tell our truth, I think it's powerful. I think it's transformational. I think that it shifts the onus in a way that most system actors don't like, because they are put on Front Street about their either lack of action or their complicity with the harm that is occurring, right? And so they, oftentimes, us being in the room is so uncomfortable for them, is why they don't want us at the table, right? But what they have to understand is that discomfort, that is where the growth for them lies, because that discomfort is where change is born. The greatest motivator for change is pain. And so, like, when they're uncomfortable at those tables, in those meeting spaces, we, Muffin, I, and other folks are forcing them to grow. And they don't like that. But it's okay, because it is what it is. We're not going to stop. And we're not going to stop because I am compelled to be out here. I am dog tired. I've been going nonstop, as has Muffin, since October 15th, really before October 15th. But especially since October 15th, when early voting started. And we haven't had no days off. We had no days off. But you know what? When I think about January 1st, when Governor Cooper's inaugurated, that will be the time to take the time that we need off. You know what I mean? Because at the end of the day, we are compelled to be here at 5:30 in the morning, 6 o'clock, whatever time, because we know that we have nothing to lose through all of this but our change. Because we don't have shit now, y'all. What do we got but a whole bunch of damn debt, a whole bunch of trauma, a whole bunch of trying to make it in a capitalistic white supremacist world that literally hates our black ass bodies. You know what it's like to know that you and what you look like is hated every day? Every day. Somebody reminds you that you black and what blackness is in America. Every day. Not some days. Every single day. Every single day. Sometimes multiple times a day. And so that's why it's important that we be at the table. Because we still able to take all of this off and show up. If that's not resilience, if that's not strength, if that's not leadership, then I don't know what is. That means we got leadership conflated. I couldn't get the word I was gonna say, conflated with showy displays of money and power. And just because you have money and power and fame or prestige doesn't make you, it doesn't.
Absolutely. I agree 100%. For folks who are just waking up and joining us, can someone recap what we're doing and where we're going?
Do that, and also talk a little bit about the Prison Solidarity Project and some of the letters that we are going to lift up today. Or Muffin.
What'd you say? I'm sorry.
I was saying, well, it sounded like Melissa wanted an overview of what we're doing just for new people who've joined the Zoom, but also, can you talk a little bit about the Prison Solidarity effort where, you and others, sent letters to people in prison saying that you're putting solidarity?
Oh gosh.
Oh. Sorry about that, y'all.
Oh gosh. My heart's in my chest where it's supposed to be, but it's beating fast. But okay, so we did a letter writing campaign where we wrote over 300 letters to folks who are currently incarcerated in the DPS system. And we got some responses, and we sent in a questionnaire about what was going on as far as, because we know that DPS will lie about what was going on in in the facility.
Cherry Hospital, I know we will.
Okay, so I'm gonna read this letter first because this letter is quite disturbing. And the letters, they're answering the questions that we sent in. And the first question was, please describe your experience with COVID-19 so far. This person said, well, I tested positive here at Neuse Correctional. I was told I was negative the first 2 weeks after I took the test. Then they told me and other incarcerated individuals we were all positive. Months later, I received a letter saying I was positive. Being positive here at the Neuse was the worst experience I've ever been through in my life. And I'm 47 years old. I wouldn't wish this experience on anyone. What is your biggest concern during the COVID-19 pandemic? My biggest concern was that I was worrying about dying and not being able to make it out of here to be with my family again. Neuse Correctional neglected all the incarcerated individuals and also the officers by lying to us at the beginning, saying no one had the COVID-19. They kept shipping incarcerated folks until the numbers soared into the 500s. From day one, we were neglected and lied to by Superintendent Reed. Mm-hmm. On a scale of 1 to 5, with 1 being low and 5 being high, how likely do you think you were to become infected with COVID-19? 5, of course. As I stated in number 2, the state DPS and Neuse Correctional did a very poorly job at keeping the incarcerated individuals and staff safe, unharmed, and well during the pandemic. Neglect was the only word I could come up with. They moved incarcerated folks all over the camp, spreading the virus more and more until 500 out of 800. On a scale of 1 to 5, with 1 being low and 5 being high, how scared are you that you'll become severely ill and or die from COVID-19? 5, I was sick and tested positive during the COVID-19 virus. Also, during the first month I tested positive, I had flu-like symptoms. I lost my taste and smell. I had an upset stomach and sores. Also, I was bit by a brown recluse spider, and a week later caught MRSA. Since then, I've become short of breath, have sores appearing all over my body. I'm having panic attacks, nightmares, and very afraid to be around a lot of people. What do you think North Carolina Department of Public Safety could do to improve the maximum level of safety to people who are incarcerated in state prisons and working in state prisons during the COVID-19 pandemic? First of all, the state failed to tell the incarcerated folks the truth from day one, and that put folks into panic mode. They waited till it was too late, in which caused riots here at Neuse and people getting hurt. They failed to reduce the population of the sick, over 58, nonviolent, etc. I should have been in the ELC program, but I was overlooked as well. They failed to house folks in the right custody levels. Dorms were overcrowded, having 60 instead of 54. The living conditions here at Neuse are unsanitary. The staff are rude, not trained to do the best in pandemic situations. I was charged with a DWI and given 21 to 35 months. I haven't had a DWI in 9 years, 10 months. So I was given 21 to 35 months. I've been a model incarcerated person 12 months now and infraction free. I'm at the very lowest I can get out, which is 21 months. I'm in the drug program and I hold the top spot in the class of 60 incarcerated individuals, which is chief expediter. I feel like I came to prison for 21 months and was given a life sentence. I get out in June 2021 if God willing. One thing I've learned from all of this is from now on, make positive choices in life and abide by the rules. Try to live life right, never know if tomorrow's promised. And then this is free to do expressions. They need to train all officers better in DPS. The state needs better ways in rehabilitation to incarcerate folks to become better in life, learning trades, education, and putting God back in the prisons. The mental health and medical in state prisons are unacceptable. I've been on backlog to see the doctor here at Neuse since January of this year. Okay, y'all, we in November, and I have an injury from a fall I had in the 96 when I fell on a job, 36 feet. I have neck pain that started in November 2019 at Craven Correctional. I have a foot injury here on an I-beam rolled on my foot on a job in 2004. I have a spot on my nose that the doctor says looks like cancer and a knot on my testicles. I have yet to see the doctor here, just the nurse. I'm in pain because they won't give me any pain medicine. They won't take x-rays of any of the things I've listed or do anything to reduce the injuries from hurting me on a daily basis. Because of the way I've been treated for my injuries and sickness as of COVID-19, I'm in the process of filing a lawsuit at this time. Everything I've said is true and not made up. I could go on into a lot more details about this camp and reform for incarcerated folks, but I'll let you take a look at this first. I thank you for your time and consideration of trying to change the way our prisons are run. If you have any questions, feel free to write me back. Have a safe and wonderful day. And that's a lot. And I've got several more. Whew.
Yeah. I mean, so in their to request, Melissa, I mean, that's why we're asked for help that so far, Department of Public Safety is not responding to. And, we're trying to highlight them and raise them to the governor. Obviously, everybody's going through a lot now with the pandemic, but, people in prison are truly going through the most. When you hear that sort of callousness for human life, that should shock anybody. Again, as Christy said, it doesn't shock people who've been in prison, but it really should shock us all into action. And so, that's why we're driving down the Neuse. We're taking the vigil on the road. We left from the governor's mansion this morning, where we've been holding vigil for 18 days, and took a caravan down to Neuse. The actual logistics of the caravan, I personally destroyed by not being able to talk on the phone and navigate. So our caravan sort of broke up, but we're about to get back together, meet back up in about 8 minutes, and then basically use Neuse as a backdrop to talk about these same issues and to let people know that we care. That's one of the big issues. And Muffin said there were 300 letters. That's how many Muffin personally sent out. But between Muffin and Christy and Lynn and Diana and Benevolence Farm, there was about 2,000 letters that were sent out to people. And basically that letter said that we stand in solidarity with those individuals, and we're going to do everything we can to lift up their voices and not let people forget. And I'll just go back to what Christy said last week at the last Sunday at the public lunch. I can't guarantee that, or none of us can guarantee that that action's going to be taken. But what we can say is that people will know, and if they don't take action, they're going to know, exactly how who they're hurting and how unfair, how racist, how inhumane they're acting, which is par for the course. But again, it's usually hidden, and so we are using this to highlight issues so that everybody knows. And obviously, our primary goal is that people actually protected. Since y'all were there, Christy and Muffin, can you give a sense of the tone at Neuse right now, or I guess the nature around Neuse?
What he asked? What you say, Daniel?
Well, understandably, you couldn't understand because I was just babbling. I was just trying to toss it over to y'all since y'all are already at Neuse.
Well, we right here at Cherry Hospital because we waiting for the caravan to pick back up. We all got separated, so this is a spot for us to meet. So if y'all come to Cherry Hospital, it's right down the street.
Good stuff.
Hold on, we get ready to get up with Laura right quick. Hold on. Hey, we're trying to get your attention.
I saw that after.
Yes, that was us, Laura.
Yeah, I went to prison and I was driving around and one of the great cops was like, "What are you doing?" I was like, "What did you
Laura done went to the prison.
Yeah, I was in the prison just driving around.
You just driving around in prison. That is so hilarious, y'all.
You should be blowing horn while you doing.
Right.
You're right. We get
We get ready to do it.
so we already know, like,
They're
gonna block us
they
from
block
going in
us
there.
out. But they don't know right now.
They don't know right now.
They don't know right now, so we can, go in it. And the folks on the inside are gonna hear us and come to the windows.
Yeah, we have to beep on the because their windows are not up. When we turn up in there, there's
right.
no windows right there. We're gonna have to beep
On the street.
on the street. They're probably gonna block us from going up in there. And you remember last time we had to turn around in the grass to get back out.
Yeah, because they blocked us.
Because they blocked us.
Because that
going
officer
in
had
there.
their F-150. He
Right.
might not be there today.
We might not.
Yeah, because that was in the afternoon.
Yeah, they used his F-150. Well, he used his F-150. But that's because he saw what's coming.
Daniel, where are you guys at?
Do I need to read some more of these?
We're about to take a right on O'Berry Center Drive. It says we're 6 minutes away. But I will say that I drove this I was in the middle of the caravan and lost it, and I didn't realize people were following me, and so we went all the way to like 95, and it's been an ordeal.
Oh Lord!
I finally literally had to pull to the side and be like, I can't drive and leave. Y'all have to go. So now I'm on the back.
Okay, well, we getting ready to. There's I don't know which way y'all coming in, but there's a little parking lot down the street from this at the old Cherry Hospital. Right now, we're at the new Cherry Hospital. So yeah, you'll just look for mine and Laura's car on the street, on the same street as it is. It's Stevens Mill Road, I want to say, is the name of the street. But yeah, so we're gonna go inside. We're gonna ride by, beep our horns, pull up in there. They're gonna probably block us, or they might not. We don't sit. We just go by with the drive by, beeping the horn, and yeah, just show love to the folks who are incarcerated. It's twofold. You know, I say this all the time. It's not just a radical display of love. It's also a reminder to system actors that we haven't forgot. It's a reminder to the people inside that we love you, we see you, we haven't forgotten you, but it's also a reminder to those system actors that we have not forgotten your lack of action during one of the greatest humanitarian crises that we've ever seen in this country. And so we don't no longer have to wonder, Daniel, what people have done or who they are. They have shown us who they are. Because in these moments, who you are is becomes very prominent, right? Like who you are as a person at your core and what you value, that's what you lead with during these times. And so when we see people being squishy or willy-willy or yellow belly cowards, refusing to act, it is what it is. That's who they are. That's who they are. It's not going to change. Because if this doesn't force you to do an about face, I don't know what will. I don't think anything will. And as you alluded to earlier, that we used to think that if there was a wildfire coming towards the prisons, that they would let people go. And now we see, no, they will let them burn alive if they can't figure out how to transfer them to another facility. Well, yeah, we learned that on Katrina. You know? And so like, but Katrina was, you could argue at Katrina that was a one isolated incident, because that's what they would say, right? Because that, oh, New Orleans, that was just a one isolated incident. But now we see this is happening across the country. It's not just the pandemic in North Carolina, right? We see the refusal to let folks go happening across this country, from federal prisons to state prisons to local jails. They have not decarcerated the way that we would have imagined that decarceration would happen. They just haven't done it. And so that's the crazy part to me. It's not even crazy. That's the part that I'm glad that people are seeing, like no matter what people say out their mouth, how about much they care. Even Roy Cooper, who says, you know, he believes in the health of all North Carolinians. Well, we're here to remind Roy that the people in Neuse and in these carceral facilities are North Carolinians, Roy. The hell? So if you believe in the health and well-being of all North Carolinians, why has he not used his executive clemency powers to free the people?
Yeah. And the people, you know, if I was talking to Cooper right now, I would urge him to understand that his instincts on this are bad. Like if you have in years and years and years, and as we constantly point out, like he is partially responsible for mass incarceration. He's been a state representative, a state senator, an attorney general, and a governor for 34 years. And so he's no lead us down this path of mass incarceration.
The wall that Roy built.
Exactly. And the idea that he will sort of naturally be the wrecking ball that we need him to be is not, that's farcical. So we have to force him and compel him. And I hope that he would have enough sort of wisdom to understand that he has a blind spot here, that his instincts are bad, and that he needs to empower other people with his power to actually provide relief. And I don't know that he has the wisdom to do that, but I hope he does. But, you know, that's what we're trying here. So we are passing Cherry now. And I look,
okay.
Hopefully we'll see y'all.
You'll see us on your, if you're passing Cherry, you'll see us on your right once you get to the light, one of those lights. We're on your right hand side.
Yeah, there's a cash point on the left, and then y'all are on the right.
Yeah, we're right there at the old Cherry Hospital. What is all these buildings?
Remember, they were old. The dudes said that they were.
Yep, I see y'all.
The site was part of Neuse.
Oh.
And they shut it down. They shut down Cherry Hospital. All of this. You remember it? So you said all this is Cherry.
Oh, is this all of us? Oh.
Yep.
All right, y'all. Well, let's get it started. I ain't gonna hit you, sir. Do y'all think we need to have a meet and greet?
You want to? Here, I should flip it around so y'all can put y'all on. Let's see. How do you flip it?
So, like, if it's wet, don't get your car stuck in the mud because you have big turnaround space. That's my only advice. And then okay, we are libertarians. We libertarians.
This is a March/religious event.
It's not a march.
Not a march. I'm in a parade.
A parade. We are liberators.
That's not our religion, liberators.
I got you. Awesome. Valak here. Laura. Cheerios holding it down. Hey, buddy. So that was our brief religious demonstration slash parade. You know, we're gonna try to do this weekly, led by Muffin and.
I swear I just said that, Daniel. We need to come back every week because we see that they outside this early.
Yeah.
Oh, it's on.
Yeah, what did you think, Christy? What we could hear them shout.
Yeah, they
Yeah,
see the
baby.
windows.
Wait a minute. Let me get on. Yes, like you saw the people that were in those individual cages. Those are folks that are like in maximum. That's why they're individual. They can't be out with everyone else, but they were outside. So you heard they saw us and they were yelling at us. The window, the guy saw us, and then he was like telling other people to come to the window. They were walking in between buildings. But you see, they brought another truck out, so that's why we had to go because we didn't want them to punish them because we're out there and lock them back early because they are outside. Even though, look at it, y'all, 7:30 in the morning, and you got rec time at 7:30 in the morning. Nobody would normally do that. Like, you know, not in one spot. Like if you're jogging or something, I get it. But it's a Saturday morning, so yeah. Christy was like, we gotta do this every weekend because we know that they're outside. We know they're going to hear us, and they'll know that we're talking about.
What did you think?
I think we should do other ones too. Like I think Wake Correctional somewhere that we maybe start out at Wake Correctional in the morning, NCCIW, wake them up on our caravan out here because it's not far from the governor's pension. So
yeah, I'll see y'all next Saturday, 5 a.m.
Maximum impact. Yeah, I think we're gonna have a maximum impact. At least, you know.
We're supposed to be Corey.
Oh, what happened to Corey?
I don't know. Look, let me do your phone.
I don't know. I don't know what happened to Corey. Oh, I need the GPS down. I'm turning. Okay, because she on mute. Daniel, this was beautiful. I mean, we saw more people this time than we saw the last time, which was discouraging, but encouraging at the same time because we got to physically see them. Like we saw them in the windows the last time, and it was like they were all locked back, and they had like they didn't have. Some of them had masks on, some of them didn't. And to see all of them out there, I don't know. It's heartbreaking, but it's also heartwarming at the same time because they're so excited to see us, and we get so excited to see them, and it's like we get to scream, "We love you! We see you!" They hear us. They're sending us hearts back. I just makes me think of how can we make this bigger and better, right? Am I supposed to turn right here? Shit, hold on.
Yeah, exactly. Well, thanks to everybody who came out for the caravan. And I just want to give everybody else any sort of a chance to say closing comments, but we've been on here for about 90 minutes. So I want to let other people go back to sleep. Melissa, thank you for hosting this. And Christy, Muffin and I and others will be out at the vigil as we have been for the last 18 days outside of the governor's mansion. So this was just a, taking the vigil on the road, but we're still out there putting the pressure on Roy Cooper. And you heard the
Corey, I was like, we put that Neuse Correctional already. Right in front of us. Oh, I got somebody pulled. Oh no, he's with that little truck.
That Christy lead us again next week to what I want to say about why people should care about this.
Can you repeat it? Didn't hear you.
Oh no, I was just saying that anybody want to say any final thoughts before we end the Zoom?
Oh no.
Okay, well, I'll just say that again, it's super important that we don't forget about those who are so often forgotten about in our community. And it is literally our duty to ensure that incarcerated folks are cared for, are loved, and you know, all of that. And so it's, even if you can't physically be here, just folks sharing things, and folks liking the page, all of that engagement is necessary for the success, for Governor Cooper to really understand that, you know, this is not a vigil that is in any way, shape, or form is against him. This vigil is in support of him, using his executive powers to provide relief to incarcerated people as a way to show his commitment to racial justice. Because you can't just create a task force for racial justice. There are some tangible, actionable things that he and he alone can do to provide mass relief to people who are incarcerated. And that would really shape and shift the way this state. It muted me, Daniel, but I don't know. But we got to talk to Corey, so you go ahead and talk.
Yeah, we hope people join this effort. As Christy said, this is like without a doubt, and I don't know how to say this any other way, but this is the humanitarian civil rights sort of disaster of our times. I mean, this is the intersection of mass incarceration, which is, you know, has its roots and its purposes in racial inequities and oppression. It's mass incarceration intersecting with a deadly disease, and the outcomes are foreseeable. And we've been raising alarms about this since
Hello, can you hear us?
March. And yeah, go ahead.
Oh, no, so we're back. No, I was just going to say that, like, so we really appreciate all the engagement that we've had thus far. You know, but we definitely need more people to like, to share, to come out. It's really a beautiful community that we have created at the Governor's Mansion. I have so many conversations with people walking by, people who decide to sit and chat. And it really is a way to build community around a common issue. So I just think people are missing out when they don't come sit vigil with us, because we get to know each other on a deeper level, but also we get to, you know, to build something beyond just trauma bond. So much of our work is based in trauma, and we bond over that trauma. But this is a way for us to bond over really good things. A lot of us do advocacy work around the conditions of incarceration, and that's traumatizing even for folks who are reading the letters. I don't know if y'all heard when Muffin was reading, after she finished the letter, she took this huge breath because it was so disgusting how these folks have been treated and are treated every single day. And so it's good for us to take some of the weight off and sit in vigil and remember that we're sitting in vigil for freedom and for racial justice. So again, it is day 18. We'll be here to January 1st. And yeah, I'm excited. I'm tired, but I'm also resolute in our commitment to seeing this through. And we hope that we get some word from Governor Cooper or his staff, because we haven't heard anything. People keep asking, have y'all heard anything? Have you heard anything? And I'm like, well, no, I haven't heard anything. I don't know if anybody else has heard anything, but I'm sure I would know if we had heard anything. So the silence to me is not alarming. I hope that he's getting his affairs in order to meet our demands, and that's where that silence is coming from. I'm going to choose to remain positive because I hate to go off on Roy. I would hate to drag Roy. I really would. I mean, I don't want to, but I will. You know I will, Daniel. I would drag him for filth. I don't want to have to do that. I just want him to be able to go on and, you know, enjoy his last term and let people free and, you know, have a legacy that shows that, you know, over time, you're supposed to grow as a professional. You're not supposed to be stagnated in your profession. You know what I mean? I've tried to ensure that I've grown in my advocacy. And so, you know, I'm not the same advocate I was in 2011 and 2012. I would expect that he wouldn't be the same as he was 10 or 12 or 15 or 20 years ago. And so I'm still looking for evidence of his growth. And this will show all of us that all the experiences that he's had over the last 34 years led him to this moment. And so this could be truly a great moment for him, but also not to just censor Roy. It's a great moment for North Carolinians when our community members are able to return to the community. But at the same time, Daniel, I'm gonna tell you a very real fear, and I hope I'm not, this fear that I express doesn't stop people from moving forward. But for the community and for the state, when people do come home, we have to be committed to them coming home to something. Because to get free and to come home to nothing is also a tragedy, right? And so like our duty as a community and as a society is to take care of folks who come home through reentry services and programs, through giving them money, through making sure their families are stable. Housing is a right. Healthcare is a right. Being whole and healthy is a right that we have. And so like, I think, people always say, well, what's next? What happens once they get free? And it's like, we do the right thing when they get free so that they can be free and so that we can be free. So if people can just share our content, like our page, talk to people. When we have actions, we'll be having actions coming up soon, like postcards that we'll be sending into the governor's office, mass email in days to the governor's office, mass phone in, dial in days. When we have those, we just ask that if you can't physically come to the vigil, I know you got a phone that you can push redial on 100 million times all day long. So that's the type of stuff that we're asking people to be engaging in. You can do that from anywhere in this country and to show solidarity. I would like to say that Daniel, we've also inspired people by our vigil. So the ACLU of Wisconsin's Campaign for Smart Justice also is sitting vigil at their governor's mansion to force him to use clemency as well. And so, I think it shows that that when you take a risk, because that's what we're all doing. We work for organizations, Daniel, that work with state legislators, and in order for things to get done, like we need to have these good relationships. And so we're all taking professional risks by even calling our governor in this way. And so when people see the importance of that and replicate that, it just gives credence to how important it is that the professional relationship is nothing if my people don't get free. What good is having a relationship if I can't leverage the relationship to get our people free? So I would encourage folks who have relationships and who have power to not be afraid to use that power. If Trump's administration has taught us anything, is that you can just basically do what you want and the American people would just roll over. I mean, that's what his administration has taught us. That the American people are not really married to the democracy the way that we think they are. And so you can just do things and be fine. And so like, do that. You know what I mean? Do that, if nothing else, because not only is it already within his power to do these things, it's his last term. I just don't understand, Daniel, like he's moving into his last term. This is the last few weeks of his first term. He already knows he's won. New Jersey just released 2,500 people in one day. New Jersey, you know what I mean? With more expected. And so, like, I don't know. I guess it's just like us still waiting to be placed back on lockdown. I mean, how many people got to die in North Carolina? How many counties got to be red before we say, forget these breweries, forget these businesses. We're going to figure out a way to pay people so that they can stay home. Because good gracious, you know what I mean? And so, like, all of that. So I'm going to stop talking now. But I just want people to really understand how important this work is and that we're not just out here for lights, because it ain't enough lights in the world to keep getting me up every damn weekend this time in the morning, these ungodly ass hours. There's not enough car in the world for that. Ain't enough lights, ain't enough shares.
Well, thank you very much, Christy, for your leadership and sacrifice. And Muffin and everybody else who joined. At least press stop recording.
Thanks everyone for what y'all are doing.
We get ready to turn around real quick. Do y'all see that big old? You should have made a left right here.
I know. I already know.
That big old sign behind us. We're getting ready to go take a picture.
So
of
y'all
that
might not want to
sign.
follow us.
So yeah, y'all might not want to
It's-
follow us.
It's a huge one. Wow.
Yeah, you see it, right? So yeah.
Tell this other guy.
Yeah. That's Alan. Smash Democracy. I mean,
Oh, they all
smash
follow us.
racism, not smash democracy.
Oh, he got time.
Yeah, he
What? Cooper.
he got
Cops,
Cooper.
Cooper. KKK.
KKK. That's what it say.